we're not very good at getting past the idea of something looks good and sounds good, so it must be good. We're not very good at getting past that. Even when we know that just because it looks good and sounds good doesn't mean it is good, we still treat it like it is, right? So let's say your favorite celebrity, your favorite actor, you got somebody you really like. I'm a big Harrison Ford fan. I just whatever he's in, I'm going to watch it. He does a great job. But the thing is, all the characters, Harrison Ford characters that I like, all the ones that I admire, like he didn't come up with any of that. Like he's just pretending. He's reading lines that somebody else wrote. So you've got this actor that you like, and you watch all the interviews that they do. You watch all the movies. Maybe you read their book that somebody else wrote for them. You just like this person because they look good and they sound good. You admire who they pretend to be. All the while knowing that they're pretending. It's not really them. That's not who they are. But the writer that wrote all the lines that you admire, that created the characters that you like, that created these stories that you really connect to, you have no idea who they are. They don't get the interviews. They don't get the book deals. They're not celebrities. They're not on the red carpet. So the person that's in the background actually doing the work is somebody that you never recognize. Or politicians. You know that the politicians are going to lie to you. You know this. This is just how it is. They're going to lie to you. Part of their job, and we've just accepted this idea that they're going to lie to us. And it's just part of the way it is. But even knowing that, you've got your favorite politician that you like, and you're like, whatever they say is true. I believe whatever they say. They're definitely not just saying whatever I want to hear, right? They're telling the truth. Everybody else is lying, and they're telling the truth. Meanwhile, one of the few honest politicians is just working in the background. They don't get on social media. They're not the ones that go viral. They're not the ones you see clips of because they're like, maybe it's more nuanced than that. Maybe I shouldn't get on there and just lie. Maybe I shouldn't just inflame things. And yet they lose the election to the guy that comes along behind them is willing to lie. They lose the election. They lose the spotlight. They never get the good appointments because they're telling the truth and doing the hard-working job quietly in the background. But it's the people that look good, that sound good, that say the things you want to hear, they're the ones that get to the top. Or just to pull it back a little bit, maybe this happens at work. You've seen this at work, right? A person that's maybe not that great at their job, but is really great with people, rises to the top, right? Their work is subpar, but they do a really good job connecting with the boss. They're really good at kissing up. They're really good at getting there. And so they get promoted. Meanwhile, the guy that's keeping the company running, that maybe doesn't have the best social skills, is somewhere in the background doing the work, keeping everything running, not getting the promotions, not getting ahead, not getting the raises. And you know all that's true, right? You know all that's true. But still, who do you lift up? It's the person that looks good and sounds good, even though you know this is the way it is. There's something about us that we can't get past this. And we're going through the book of James, and James addresses this, not when it comes to celebrities, not when it comes to politicians, but the people that you look to for how you should live your life, the people you look to for how you should model your life, the people that you look to teach you about things. It's really easy for us to do the same thing with them, not to look for the person that knows the most or is the wisest, but the person that looks the best and sounds the best. And so what James does at the end of chapter 3 is he's going to give us some tests to use to determine who we should listen to, who we should follow, who we should allow to set the pattern for our lives. And that's what we're going to do looking today in James chapter 3. Let's just jump in James chapter 3, starting in verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? This is like a raise your hand thing. Don't. But, this is what he's saying. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. If you remember, and this has been a couple of weeks ago because we had Family Day and we did some other stuff, but a couple of weeks ago, back at the beginning of chapter 3, he says, not many of you should be teachers, my brothers. And he goes through this long list about not necessarily saying you shouldn't be a teacher, but saying if you're going to sign up for this leadership position, if you're going to sign up for being responsible for this, there's a higher standard of accountability for you. And he goes through and talks about how we will all be held accountable for our actions and our words, that we're responsible for how we say things and how we do things. Talks about how destructive our words can be, how it can cause problems with our relationship with God, with our relationship with each other. It can burn down our whole lives. But he starts this idea with teachers. And then he comes back to this idea of teachers, okay? So it's this wise and understanding. It can be just wise and understanding. It can be that. But this phrase is generally used to refer to teachers, like the people that you look to for who you're going to follow, the wise and understanding among you. So it's not just who thinks they're pretty smart in the room, but it's, okay, we've given you a warning about teachers and being careful who you listen to and not setting yourself up for that. But if you're going to be one of those people, here's something that you need to recognize, because as much advice as he gives to teachers about you're going to be held accountable for your words, you're going to stand before God and answer for how you teach people, how you lead people. As much as he says that, there are going to be people that don't listen. So it's up to us not just to depend on our leaders, not just to depend on our teachers, not just depend on people that we look to influence our lives to do the right thing, but for us to be wary, for us to be on guard and look out for certain things if they're not going to do this. So who is wise and understanding among you? Who's going to be the teacher? Who's going to stand out and be the leader? The word wise, like this is, the way it's used right here is like knowledge. That's not generally what wisdom means, but that's the idea we've got here. Like who knows things, who's going to stand up and teach. But then also, it's not just like who's your small group leader? Who was your Sunday school teacher somewhere else? We don't have those. Who's your pastor? It's not just that, but who is understanding. The word understanding here is talking about how you live your life, not just somebody who teaches you what the Bible says, but people who you pattern your life after, people who have influence over how you live. Who are those people? Do you want to aspire to be one of those people? Do you consider yourself one of those people? If you do, then you need to check yourself and make sure that the wisdom that you're sharing is the wisdom from God and not wisdom from somewhere else. And he says the way that you determine this is by looking at what's going on inside you. If you're somebody we're going to get to the rest, everybody else in just a minute. But if you're somebody that aspires to teaching, aspires to leadership, aspires to be somebody that other people follow, and you wouldn't think it's that many, but since the number one growing career right now is influencer, apparently everybody wants to do that. You need to consider this about yourself. Is the wisdom that you're using, is it coming from a place where it's godly wisdom or is it worldly wisdom? Here's how you tell that. By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. It's going to come from what's inside you. And if the thing that motivates you to want to help people, want to lead people, want to set the example, all those things, that's all good things. If it's from meekness, then what you have and what you're sharing is from God. That's what's going on. That doesn't mean you know everything, but it means that you've got the right intentions. You're going to be a good place to do this. So what is meekness? I've got a bad definition of meekness in my head, because when I think of meekness, I think of Miss Mary, who played piano at the church I was at growing up, and she was very soft-spoken. Her husband was pretty mean, and so she was just very soft-spoken and very quiet and very timid. And that's what I think of. That's not what it means at all, okay? Meekness is not weakness, it's controlled strength. So Jesus was meek. Jesus could do whatever he wants to. He has the strength, he has the power to do whatever he wants to, but he controlled that strength. And instead of using his strength to do whatever he wanted or to accomplish his own goals, he used it for the good of others. He talks about the meek in the Beatitudes, and where he talks about that, he's not saying I really like it if people just walk all over you. That's what I'm going for here. But the idea that you don't use your strength, you don't use your resources for yourself, but for the good of others. So when he says here, okay, if you're a teacher, you're a leader, you're an influencer, you aspire to be that, and you're doing it because you want good for the people that you're leading, that you're teaching, that you're influencing, then what you're doing is going in the right direction, right? You're the kind of person that needs to be listened to. Maybe you need to grow, maybe you need to learn. Doesn't mean you know everything, but it means you're going in the right direction. If you have a heart that says, I'm doing this because I desire for them to do better, I want to push them forward, then you're coming from the right place. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, Do not boast and be false to the truth. If instead the reason you're doing this is because you're jealous of other people who are in the spotlight, you're jealous of other people who get influence, and you want to be that person, you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, you want this position because you want some petty little power, you want to be in the spotlight, you want those, and so you're going to teach, you're going to lead, you're going to influence, so you get to be up front, then the wisdom that you're going to be sharing is not from God. It's what you're doing is not from God. And so you shouldn't lie and pretend that somehow what you're doing, oh yeah, it's really for the people, because God knows what's actually going on inside you. God knows your actual motivations for doing this. So that warning at the beginning of chapter 3, don't be a teacher if you're not ready to be held accountable, applies here too. You say, I want to stand up and I want to lead. I want to have influence. I want to teach. None of those are bad things. None of those are things that you should say, well, I'm evil because I want those. But you need to check, what are your motives on this? Why do I want to do this? Do I want it for their good? Do I want it so they go further? Or do I want it so I go further? Do I want it so I get to be in the spotlight? He said, this wisdom that's all about pushing yourself forward, all about serving yourself, all about using your resources to make you go further. This is not wisdom that comes down from above. This is not from God. This is earthly, unspiritual, demonic wisdom. This is wisdom that's all about you. And so the first warning here is for you to check yourself. You want to teach? You want to lead? You want to have influence? Okay. Why? Why do you want that? Now, this is going to be harder. If this is you and you're examining yourself, you can do this. But this is harder for other people to check. What's going on inside your heart. Because everybody can fake it, right? Everybody can fake it. Especially people that are trying to use you, they can fake it. For me, I get to see a little bit different perspective. I can see a little bit different and check this a little bit. And this is the way that I check this. And somebody comes to me and says, we don't get very many people to say, I want to teach. I wish we had more. But usually what happens is somebody comes and says, I want to lead. I want to lead. I think God's given me the gift of leading. And here's how I check the heart. Here's how I check what's actually going on inside of them. I ask where they're serving. Like, I want to start this women's ministry, or I want to do this thing with the men, or I want to do this thing with the kids. Like, this is what I want to do. Okay, how are you already serving? Because a heart that says, I care about them and them going further is not going to be obsessed with being in charge, but is already going to be serving in whatever way they can. And so if you're already serving and you come to me and say, hey, I want to lead, I want to teach, I want to do whatever, I'm going to say, where are you serving? And if you're already serving, if you're already working in the background, there's a good chance I'll let you come out into the spotlight because you've already demonstrated where your heart is. But that's not what usually happens. Usually, the people that are already serving that end up in leadership is that we look to them and have to beg them to come out into the spotlight. We say, you would be really good at this. We've recognized this in you. Come out and do this. And they have a really hard time. They're reluctant to do it. Generally what happens is people come to me and say, I want to lead. And I say, where are you serving? And they're like, well, my gifting is really about leadership. And so I don't do that so much, but I think my service would be to lead. And my response is always the same thing. I don't think we're ready for that yet. I don't think we're ready for that ministry. I don't think we have the resources for that. Here's a place that we need you to serve. And if you serve here for a while, we'll keep having the conversation. And when we get to that point, then we'll let you lead if you'll serve. And almost always what happens is maybe they'll say, okay, maybe they'll say, yeah, but generally they disappear because they don't want to serve. If you've got vain or selfish ambition and bitter jealousy, you're not going to want to serve because it's not about the other people, it's about you. And they disappear. And so here's just what I want you to know. I want you to lead. I want you to serve. I want you to get to the point that you can teach. I want you to lead. I want you to influence. I want you to get to the point you can teach. I want you to do those things. But you're not going to lead here until you're willing to serve. And if you're willing to serve, then we'll give you a chance to lead. But if it's all about what you get to lead and how you get to be in the spotlight and how you get to do that, it's not going to happen. Because for me, it's an indication of what's going on in your heart. You want to lead, you want to teach, you want to influence, serve. And then we give you the opportunity to do that. But this is a self-check. Like, that's all me, what I do from a leadership position. But this is a self-check. And you just need to consider, do you want to teach? Do you want to lead? Do you want to influence? I'm thrilled. We need people to do those things. But it has to be with the right heart. It has to be with the wisdom from above, or it's not going to work. And if you're saying, well, you know what? I look at myself and I see ambition. I see selfish ambition. I see jealousy. I want good for them, but I don't know. That's not an indication that you don't know Jesus. And maybe it is, but that doesn't mean you don't know Jesus. It doesn't mean you're not saved. It just means you're immature and you need to grow. And that's okay. We've got a bunch of little babies floating around here, and I love all these babies. I'm so glad that we have all these babies floating around. I also don't work in the nursery, so maybe it's a little bit different. But I love having all these babies around. But you want to know the defining characteristic of all of these babies, other than cuteness? They're immature. Every single one of them. We don't dislike them for immaturity. We want them to grow. And if you say, I want this for myself, but when I put myself to the test, I don't see the right things going on inside, I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset with you. As long as you say, I got to change. I got to do better. I got to serve. I need this thing to happen. That's okay. You start out immature and then you mature. That's fine. But check yourself. Because the rest of us, whenever you get in that position, also have to check you. So let's keep going. Let's read verse 16. This was supposed to be in the first one, and my slides got messed up. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. You say, how do I examine somebody's heart? How do I know what's going on in somebody's heart? I can't see inside their heart. They can fake it really well. How do I know? Well, what James says is what's going on in the heart, we've talked about this a couple of times, is always going to come out in the actions. Maybe not in the short run, but in the long run, it will always come out in the actions. So you see somebody and they fake it really well, but then you start to see some other things and you know what's really going on in there. Or you see somebody that's consistent all the way through. And he says this heart that's full of bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, this wisdom that you should not be following, the way that you can tell who that is, since you can't see into their heart, you don't get to make these decisions about who's in leadership or any of that. The way that you can tell is you can look at their actions. In their actions, there will be disorder in every vile practice. Bible translation is really hard, okay? It's really hard to translate something from Greek 2,000 years ago or from Hebrew 5,000 years ago into modern English. And so translators have to make a decision. Do I have to translate what they said or what they meant? And that's a decision translators are always wrestling with. And here, what the ESV translators did is they translated what was said, not what was meant. Okay, they want to give you the option to decide for yourself what was meant. So they translated what was said. Now, this word disorder, I want to know what this word means, because I look at that, I'm thinking, okay, is he saying that an unorganized person is from Satan? Is that what he's saying? And all the type A people would agree that's what that means. But that's not actually what that means. So I went to a couple of other pastors that are better with Greek than I am. Like, I want to know what this word means, okay? This disorder is, this word that's used here for disorder, I've forgotten what the actual Greek word, because I don't have any notes. I've forgotten what that word is. But it's used several times throughout the New Testament, and it's used in James in another place. And what it means is not like you're disorganized, but it means you're inconsistent. You're inconsistent. You say one thing over here, and you say another thing over here, and it's just not the same. It's not consistent. Like, I want you to think politician, right? You think a politician, and they're talking to one crowd, and they say one thing, and they're talking to another crowd, and they say another thing. And what he said is, like, you can tell who's working from jealousy and selfish ambition, because they're going to say whatever they need to say to get ahead. So I dealt with a pastor like this back at camp. And I don't know what he's aiming for, because this is church camp. There's not a lot of power to go around. But he came to me, and when he talks to me, he's super respectful, like weirdly respectful. Like, I'm a camp director. I'm not Jesus. You can back off just a little bit, kind of respectful, okay? So he talks to me that way. But then other people that are maybe not in charge, but are at that next level, right down, that have some influence, he's very friendly with them. He spends all his time talking to them. He wants to impress them. He's telling stories to impress them. But then he gets to this group of people down here that are just youth pastors at camp, just pastors at camp. They don't have any influence. They don't have any leadership. And to them, he is completely dismissive. No interest, no respect, completely dismissive. So when I'm talking to the guy, I think, oh, this guy's super respectful, super kind, glad he's here, all of that. But the opinion change as you go down the amount of power that the guy has. And this is what he's talking about right here. You come and talk to me. I'm the pastor. I'm the leader of the organization. I'm all that. And you're super respectful to me. You're super kind to me. You do anything in the world for me. But then you get to somebody that just goes to church here and you don't have time for them. You don't have anything for them because they have nothing to offer you. It seems like they have nothing to offer you. This is what we're talking about when we say there is disorder, that they are not consistent. Now, all of us are hypocritical. I tell you not to do things and then I turn around and do them. I am a sinner. I am fallen. It required the whole death of Jesus to save me because I am that bad, okay? That's who I am. That's who you are too. But we're not talking about that you struggle as a sinner and you say one thing and then you struggle with that and don't do that. But this is somebody who manipulates and goes from room to room and changes from room to room. Or they live one way in front of everybody else at church and they live a totally different way somewhere else. They're inconsistent. He says, if you see somebody like that and they're aspiring to be a teacher, a leader, an influencer, don't just ignore it, but recognize what's going on inside of them. The second thing is vile practice. This is vile practice, okay? And of the words that can be used to describe sin, there's a whole list of them, right? You've got a range. And you got like stuff that involves murder, you got stuff that involves adultery, you got stuff that involves all the big sins, and then you've got this word. And this word is closer on the range, it's still describing sin, but on the range of like the worst sins to like still really bad, but not murder kind of sins. This is closer to trash than evil, okay? They're just involved with dumb stuff all the time. They have stupid fights all the time. They're quarreling with other people all the time. They're involved in things that cause trouble and don't matter all the time. And you can see what they're doing because what happens is they're just out for themselves. So an opportunity to get ahead comes along and they take it. Or maybe they bounce up against you and somebody gets sideways over somebody else and they want their good in this situation, not the good of everybody else. They're not trying to make peace at it, but instead they just keep getting involved in dumb little stuff. They're not murdering anybody. They're not having affairs. They're not embezzling from their company. They just keep getting involved in gossip and quarrels and little things like that. And at the root of it is a desire to get ahead. At the root of it is jealousy. At the root of it is just, I want for me. And you can see that come out. You see somebody that's always getting along with people, that really gives way so somebody else can go ahead, that puts other people first. They're not in this category. And that doesn't mean just because you have conflict that this is here, but it's how you respond to that conflict. So let's say you've had a bad day. We have this happen a lot. I was a little bit irritated over something that happened a couple of weeks ago. We do all these things to help people, and somebody comes in and we get sideways with somebody. It's not that you never have conflict, but how do you respond to that conflict? So you get sideways with somebody, what do you do about it? Well, I don't really care about the situation. It was their fault. Or do you say, you know what? I was wrong. I was having a bad day. Maybe they took it the wrong way. I don't know, but I want to make it right. How do you respond to that? It's not just conflict, but it's somebody that has conflict, constantly has conflict, and never tries to make a resolution. They just ignore it, or they blame it on somebody else, or there's always a reason it's not their fault. So you want to know, how do you check what's going on in somebody's heart? Like, is this a person I should listen to, somebody that I should allow to influence me, somebody I should allow to teach me? Look at their life. Are they somebody that says one thing and does another, or says one thing to one person and a different thing to somebody else? Or they're somebody that's consistent, regardless of how difficult it is, regardless of what it does for them? Are they consistent? Is this somebody that's constantly involved in dumb little problems? No matter what they do, there's always a problem, something's always going on, it's always somebody else's fault. Or is this someone that tries to seek wisdom in their life, that tries to avoid that tries to make peace? So that's how you find that. And then he describes the list for like the person with the jealousy and selfish ambition. That's only two things that you're looking for. But the list for somebody that's acting with godly wisdom that you should listen to is much longer. Let's go to verse 17. And I have to keep this really short because I'll be here all day if I go through all of these the way I want to. Verse 17 says, "But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial and sincere. A harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." This is how you tell if this is somebody you should listen to. Or is what they're doing pure? Like, pure can be used a lot of ways. Sometimes it's talking about sexual purity. Sometimes it's talking about ritual purity. This is talking about pure in intention, pure in the way they do things. It's the opposite of the inconsistent we talked about a minute ago. The inconsistent person does whatever they need to do to get ahead in the situation. But this person that's pure has pure motives in what they're doing. They're going to behave the same way no matter what happens, right? They're going to be pure in their intentions, pure in their motives. They're peaceable. They just want to get along, right? They don't want to have these conflicts. They don't want to fight all the time. They don't want to have a bunch of enemies. They take responsibility for things. They apologize, even if it's not their fault, just to resolve the situation and fix it. They're peaceable. They're gentle. They're not rude. They're not jerks. They're not harsh. Open to reason. Like, you can have a conversation with this person, and it's not going to be, "No, I'm right," no matter what happens. But they're willing to listen. They're willing to admit that they're wrong. They're willing to move forward together. They're full of mercy. They're not holding other people to an impossible standard while they're giving themselves grace. They say, "You know what? I get it. You're having a bad day. You know what? I get it. Things have been rough." And they just show mercy and let people move forward. They're full of good fruits. They produce good things in their life. It doesn't mean they're getting rich. It doesn't mean they're always getting promoted. It doesn't mean that they're always got a new vehicle. It means that good things are coming out of their life. The people that they surround themselves are benefiting from being in their situation. They serve, they're helping, they're producing good things in their lives. They're impartial. They don't just stick with their friends because they're their friends. They don't just stick with the people that benefit them, but they're just and they're honorable and they're willing to admit when things are wrong and they're willing to do good for everybody and not just their friends. They don't just prefer their friends in this situation. And they're sincere. They're straightforward. They tell you the truth. They're the same person all the time. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. They're people who make peace. And because they make peace, because they try to work out these situations, you can see the good in their lives. You can see this. You can see what's happening. This is who you want to follow. This is who you want to allow to influence you. This is who you want to set up as a leader in your life, of who we want to set up as a leader in this church. You want you to notice that talent is nowhere on this list. Attractiveness is nowhere on this list. And in fact, the implied lesson here is that if we have to choose somebody that's really talented and really smart, but is full of jealousy and selfish ambition, and somebody who is less talented and who has to work a little bit harder to get things right, and who doesn't know as much, but has a heart that's willing to serve, that you choose the person with less talent. That's the implied lesson here. We don't look for looks good, sounds good, but we look for people who have a wake of goodness in their life. Like, what they leave behind is peace. What they leave behind is reconciliation. What they leave behind are good things. We will be better off with less talent but better heart than we will with lots of talent but problems coming down the road. And what's the harm in all of this? What's the harm? Like, what's the harm in somebody, let's say they do a good job teaching, let's say they're really talented, let's say they're really educated, but they've got a heart of jealousy and bitter, or jealousy and ambition. Like, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem, like, it can be a range of problems, right? Maybe they just lead you into heresy right off the bat. Like, they're teaching you evil things right off the bat. Those are a little bit easier to spot. The ones that are harder to spot are the people that, like, teach you 98% truth. They're going to teach you good things almost all the time until they get something that doesn't benefit them, and then they're going to switch it up. Because if it doesn't benefit them, they're going to change it. If it doesn't benefit them, they're going to find a way around it. And you're going to find that when you figure out who they are, you're going to have to wonder, what do I know that's truth and what just sounded good? What was taught to my kids that was truth and what just sounded good? You have to wonder that. But the other thing about this is not just the teaching, but it's the destruction they leave in their wake. Because somebody that's just full of selfish ambition and jealousy will use you until they don't have any reason to use you anymore, and then they'll throw you away. They will suck everything out of you that they can and throw you away. They'll cause division, they'll cause destruction, and we're talking a church setting right here. They will kill a church. And you'll get to the end of that, and your kids won't want anything to do with church, or they won't want anything to do with your church. And you'll say, why? That person is gone. And they'll say, but you let it happen. You let this guy do this for years. You allowed it to happen. And they won't want anything to do with it. You'll figure this out, and you'll have to wonder how much of what I believe was truth from the Bible, and how much of it was just stuff they taught me to manipulate me. They leave this pattern of destruction. This pastor that I talked about just a minute ago that I'd had to deal with at camp. There's some other stuff going on that I'm having to deal with him, so I had to go back and look at his history. And what I see is this pattern of going to churches for 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, and then leaving. And the church is always worse off than it was when he got there. Relationships are always destroyed when he leaves there. Because this type of person that James talks about is somebody that just uses and uses and uses until there's nothing left to use, and then leaves you in the dust. And you look at somebody when you first meet them and you're like, hey, this person looks good, they sound good, I'm going to listen to them, I'm going to pattern my life at them, and it starts really well, and then they start getting weird, and weird things start happening, and you start going off the rails, but you're so committed to it that you don't, I don't know, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place that you never wanted to be not because all their theology was wrong, not because they were a bad teacher, not because they weren't talented, but because what was going on inside of them. You need to pay attention to this. You need to judge me. I'm doing everything I can to tell you the truth. I'm doing everything I can not to get you to say, hey, just trust me on this. It doesn't matter what this is, just trust me on this. I'm doing everything I can to be the kind of person that deserves to be listened to, that deserves to lead, that deserves to influence, because this is what God's called me to, and I'm doing everything I can. But don't stop checking me, because it will be dangerous for you. If I start getting a big head and I start going the wrong direction and I lead you down a path of destruction, you need to stop me. You need to stop allowing me to have influence. Because this isn't just about other people, it's about me. If you leave this church because you move, there's no other reason you leave this church, right? You just move. You move, God moves you to somewhere else. And you find another church. There's a lot of pastors that look good and a lot of pastors that sound good. Watch their lives to see if this is someone you should listen to or not. I don't want you to exempt me from this. I want me to be the first person that you consider. I want Evitt to be somebody that you consider, that you look at him and you say, is he somebody that I should listen to? Is he somebody that I should allow to influence me? Because if you don't, if you stop checking people, it will lead to destruction. So I just want to ask you some questions. Who has influence over you? Me, your small group leader, your deacon, whoever it is that has influence over you. Okay, that's the teaching part. But what about the modeling for your life? Who do you look at and say, I want to live like that person? I want to be like that person. Look at those people and ask yourself, is this somebody that based on their lives I should be listening to? Not how they look, not how they sound, not the impression they give, but their lives. Is this somebody that you should be listening to? This is a lot harder today than it was for James's audience, right? Because for them, it's like the only people you can listen to are the people that you can hear the sound of their voice, right? Books are not a thing. We don't have mass market that's out there doing this. Scrolls are very protected. Like, you're going to have somebody else read to you, but the people that influence you are going to be people that you live in your community, people that are your neighbors, people that go to church with you. But now, like, a lot of the people that are going to influence you are people you will never meet, that you will never spend any time with, and you will never see anything about their lives until you find out something bad. You got podcasts, you got YouTube videos, you got TV, whatever it is that you're doing, it's all from a distance. And I don't want to discourage you from using any of that, okay? There's some really great things out there. There's some really great resources. I just want you to be careful who you're listening to. Do some research. Do a Google search on somebody before you start allowing them to have an influence on you, because you can't watch their lives at a distance. So you have to be especially careful who you allow to have influence on you. I want to just ask, who has influence on your kids? Who is in a position to set the path for your kids' lives besides you? And consider, is this somebody we should allow in there, especially at teenage level, right? Kids level, we can get by with a lot of stuff. We can deal with a lot of stuff. There's less damage that can be done teaching and leadership-wise as kids. But when we get to the teenage level, they're looking for people to model themselves after. Who is having influence on your kids? Who do you let have influence on your kids? If you come up and say, I want to work with the kids, like the elementary kids or pre-K or nursery, we're going to do a background check, we're going to interview you, we're going to find out a little bit about you, but we're probably going to put you in there unless there's some big red flags. You come to me and say, I want to work with the teens, it's like, hang on. Maybe we're full right now. I don't know that we're going to do that. We're going to be really careful about who we allow around the teenagers, because we want to make sure that we're putting not just people who want to hang out with teenagers, but people who are going to be a good influence on the teenagers. We're trying that, but you have to do the same thing. I've wrestled and fought with myself about how to say this. I want to say this in a really snarky way, and I'm trying not to. This next part I'm about to say. I'm trying not to be snarky about it. I'm just trying to be straightforward about it. Do not give your kids a cell phone and access to the worst sin that has ever existed in the world without putting something on their phone to monitor what they're doing, to monitor their text messages, to monitor what they're looking at, to monitor the pictures, to block things. Do not do it. Because your kids are being influenced by people that you would not let into your house. Your kids are being influenced by people out there on the internet, and you have no idea who they are. If you can afford a phone and you can afford a cell phone plan, they're expensive. If you can afford those things, you can afford a monitoring and blocking software. And if you can't afford the software, you can't afford the phone. Do not, please, do not turn these people over to your kids over to these people. Don't do this. And I'm not just talking porn, okay? Porn's its own category thing, and it's bad. But I've been talking to pastors, okay? I've had 3 conversations in the last couple of weeks with pastors who had kids grow up in their church, go through their their youth group, but then they get into that college age and they start listening to a podcaster, and something about that podcaster grabs a hold of them, and now they're anti-Semitic. They're sexist against women, chauvinistic, that's the word we're looking for. They've got weird views about religion and what's right and what's not right, and they get these things because they get a hold of this podcaster. And you got college students, you're past your opportunity to do anything at that point. But you can control who influences your teenager right now. Please, do not give your kids a cell phone and the internet and a computer, a Chromebook, an iPad, whatever, without putting some kind of monitoring software on it, to stop them from influences that are far away, but also to monitor influences close to home. I've got kids that are really good kids. My kids are responsible, they're mature, they do all the things right. They're really good kids, but they still have friends that they hang out with that when they come back, they start acting like that friend. And we have to have this conversation. We've had it several times. Like, all right, you've got 2 choices. You can either decide that you're a child of Jesus and you're not going to allow them to be an influence over you, you're going to be an influence on them, or you can stop hanging out with them. We can block them in your phone, and you cannot go to their house, and you cannot spend time with them if they're going to be an influence that's destructive on you. And we're not talking leading them into anti-Semitism and weird things about, we're just talking about coming back being little jerks, right? We're not going to do that. You have to decide who's going to be an influence on you. And the thing is, they'll get mad at you. And parents will say, but I don't want them to get mad at me. I don't want them to know I'm going through their phone. I don't want them to get mad at me. If your teenagers aren't getting mad at you, you're doing it wrong, right? They're going to be mad at you because their brains are not fully formed yet. And they don't need you to feed them. They can go to work and get a job and provide for themselves. They don't need you for that. They need you to help them not destroy their lives. That's why you're their parent as a teenager. That's what you're going for. And that means because you're there to make decisions for them and you tell them yes sometimes and you tell them no sometimes, that means they will get mad at you. And that's okay. You can be friends with them when they grow up if you do a good job. But if you do a bad job because you don't want them to be mad at you, you want them to be your friend right now, then you don't get them later. This is how that works. Protect your kids from influences that just want to use them, that just want to take advantage of them, that want to lead them in destruction. Protect your kids. That's your job. It's nobody else's job but yours. You say, well, I don't even know who has an influence on my kid. Figure it out. Ask some questions. Talk to me after church. I'll tell you what the software that we use to monitor everything the kids do. If you don't want to use mine, Jonathan and Lewissa Boyer, I know they're on vacation right now. They normally sit out over there. They've got a really good monitoring software that they use on theirs. Or other people, I hope, dear Lord, there are other people in the church that have recommendations that they can give you. I hope. Come talk to us. Do something. Watch who has an influence over your kids. And they'll get mad at you. You'll live, right? You'll live. It'll be okay. Who has influence over you? Who has influence over your kids? Finally, we've talked a lot about other people. I just want to pull it back to you. Are you someone that I should allow to have influence over my kids? Are you someone that I should allow to have influence in this church? Are you someone that I would have to have this conversation with my kids about? I've had to have it about the teenagers that they hang out with, and I've had to have it with some adults that they've hung out with. And say, look, we love that person. They've got some great qualities. I'm glad you admire them, but you're not going to come home acting like they act, or you're not going to be around them. Are you someone that I have to have that conversation with my kid about? When you look at yourself, do you see somebody that's filled with jealousy and selfish ambition? Or do you see somebody that gives of themselves, that sacrifices of themselves for the sake of the person they have influence over? When you look at your life, do you see somebody who's always making excuses about why it's somebody else's fault? Who never takes responsibility for their actions? Or do you see somebody who's constantly working to make peace? Are you someone that I should allow to have influence over my kids? That I should allow to have influence in this church? And if you're not, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. And this doesn't mean you're on your way to hell. Maybe this conversation we need to have. But that doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means you're immature. And you need to grow. And Jesus is constantly waiting to take you from one step to the next step. I struggle with immaturity, and I have to be moved up. I have to have myself broken down. I have to have God grow me and change me. I have to do these things. It's okay for it to have to happen to you too. But if you see yourself in this, don't make me pull you. Don't make me bench you. Pull yourself back. Recognize where you are. Start to serve. Get involved in one of our discipleship groups and have other people help you grow. Because I want just to have everybody in this church be able to be an amazing influence. I want everybody in this church to be someone we can trust to teach, someone we can trust to lead. But I can't control any of that. All we control is what we do with ourselves. So examine yourself and examine those that have influence on you, including me. Is this somebody I should be listening to? Is this somebody that I should allow to their pattern of life, their model of life, to be something that I follow? Or should I look somewhere else? Consider these questions. Because if you don't, you're going to be like a lot of people that wake up to find yourself 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road and realizing that you were led into some stuff that you never wanted to be in because you trusted the wrong person. James tells you who you can trust. Will you take his warning seriously? Would you stand with me? Our Heavenly Father, we come before you right now, and I'm so grateful that you do not leave us where we are, but that you're constantly growing us, you're constantly sanctifying us, you constantly want us to move forward, Lord. And that our salvation does not depend on how good we are, how much we know, how mature we are, what's going on in our heart, but our salvation instead depends on our faith in you, our recognition that we are not good enough, but you are, and our willingness to cry out to you for rescue, Lord. But for those of us who cried out for rescue, we have to decide who is going to go ahead of us. Who are we going to look to for influence? Who are we going to look to for teaching and for modeling, Lord? And we need to make sure we make the right choices for ourselves and for our families. And I ask that you would give us wisdom and discernment to know who should be trusted, who should be followed, who should be in a position to teach and influence, Lord. And that we would examine ourselves to determine whether that's a position we actually need to be in or not, or if we need to pull ourselves back until we grow, until we mature, until we reach the place that we can be trusted with that, Lord. Help us to know ourselves. Help us to see those unseen things within our hearts, those things that we don't even recognize about ourselves, Lord. And let us be a church filled with people that we can trust. Not just trust not to take advantage of us, not just trust not to rip us off, but trust as a model and an influence and a teacher in our lives. It's in Jesus' name I pray, Lord. Amen.